What would you do if you discovered that an 11-year-old girl living in a homeless shelter possessed coding abilities sophisticated enough to stop a terrorist cyber attack that stumped the nation's top cybersecurity experts? Maya Johnson spent her days in Hope Haven's overcrowded computer lab, teaching herself programming languages while her mother, Sarah, searched for stable employment. When foreign hackers launched an assault on America's critical infrastructure, Maya's self-taught skills would reveal that sometimes the most advanced cybersecurity comes from the most unexpected places. Before we get to this wonderful story, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the story. Maya Johnson's world existed in 30-minute intervals, the maximum amount of computer time allowed per person at Hope Haven Homeless Shelter's overcrowded technology center. While other 11-year-olds spent their afternoons playing video games or watching cartoons, Maya used every precious minute of her allotted computer access to dive deeper into the complex world of programming languages, cybersecurity protocols, and network architecture. "Time's up, Maya," called Mrs. Rodriguez, the volunteer coordinator who managed the shelter's single computer lab. "You need to let someone else have a turn." Maya reluctantly saved her work, a complex piece of code she'd been developing to analyze network vulnerabilities, and logged off the worn Dell computer that served as her gateway to learning. The machine was 7 years old, donated by a tech company that had upgraded their systems, but to Maya, it represented unlimited possibilities for education and escape from the cramped quarters she shared with her mother. "What were you working on today, Mija?" asked her mother, Sarah, as they walked back to their assigned sleeping area in the main dormitory. Sarah Johnson had been staying at Hope Haven for 8 months, ever since losing her job as a medical billing specialist when the clinic where she worked closed due to budget cuts. Despite her accounting background and years of administrative experience, stable employment remained elusive in San Jose's competitive job market. "I'm learning about firewalls and network security," Maya replied, her young mind still processing the cybersecurity concepts she'd been studying. "There are so many ways that hackers can get into computer systems if they're not properly protected." Sarah smiled at her daughter's intellectual curiosity, though she worried about Maya's increasing absorption in complex technical subjects. "That's wonderful, honey, but remember to make time for normal kid activities too." Maya nodded dutifully, but the truth was that normal kid activities held little appeal compared to the fascinating world of digital security and programming challenges. She had discovered her passion for coding 18 months earlier when a volunteer computer instructor had taught basic HTML to shelter residents looking to improve their job skills. While the adults struggled with simple web design concepts, Maya had absorbed the lesson instantly and begun exploring more advanced programming languages on her own. Using free online resources and library books, Maya had taught herself Python, JavaScript, and C++. More importantly, she had developed an intuitive understanding of how computer networks functioned and where their vulnerabilities typically lay. Her analytical mind naturally gravitated toward the puzzle-like challenges of cybersecurity, finding patterns and potential weaknesses that escaped less observant students. The opportunity that would change Maya's life arrived through her mother's temporary employment at CyberShield Technologies, one of Silicon Valley's premier cybersecurity consulting firms. Sarah had been hired for a 3-week data entry project, digitizing old client files at minimum wage with no benefits. The work was mind-numbing and poorly paid, but it represented income that their family desperately needed. "Maya, you'll need to come with me to work tomorrow," Sarah explained as they prepared for bed in their small corner of the shelter's dormitory. "Mrs. Patterson is sick, so the after-school program is canceled." Maya's eyes lit up with excitement. The chance to see the inside of a real cybersecurity company was more thrilling than any field trip her old school had ever offered. She had read about CyberShield Technologies online, studying their published research papers and admiring their sophisticated approaches to network protection. CyberShield Technologies occupied the 15th floor of a gleaming office tower in downtown San Jose, with panoramic views of Silicon Valley that showcased the region's technological prosperity. The company's offices reflected their success: modern furniture, multiple computer monitors on every desk, and walls covered with awards recognizing their innovative security solutions. CEO David Chen had built CyberShield from a startup in his garage to a company worth $300 million, specializing in protecting critical infrastructure from increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. At 45, David embodied Silicon Valley's meritocratic ideals, believing that intelligence and innovation could emerge from any background. However, his daily reality was filled with Ivy League graduates and experienced engineers, making it easy to overlook potential talent that didn't fit traditional profiles. "Your daughter will need to stay in the reception area," David's assistant informed Sarah when they arrived for the first day of her temporary assignment. Children aren't allowed in secure work areas. Maya settled into a corner of the reception area with her worn laptop, a refurbished machine that a shelter volunteer had given her 6 months earlier. While her mother processed data in a back office, Maya absorbed the conversations and activities happening around her, her keen mind automatically analyzing the cybersecurity discussions she overheard. "The Henderson Bank incident keeps bothering me," she heard one engineer tell another as they passed through the reception area. "The attack pattern doesn't match anything in our threat database." Maya's curiosity was piqued. She had read about the Henderson Bank cyber attack in online security forums, a sophisticated breach that had temporarily disrupted the bank's transaction systems before being contained by their security team. The incident had puzzled cybersecurity experts because the attack methodology seemed to blend techniques from different hacker groups. During her lunch break, Maya used the reception area's guest Wi-Fi to research the Henderson Bank incident more thoroughly. What she discovered troubled her analytical mind. The attack showed characteristics that suggested it wasn't a random criminal activity, but rather a probing assault designed to test defensive capabilities and identify weaknesses for a larger, more coordinated strike. "Mom," Maya said when Sarah finished her shift, "I think the people here should be worried about follow-up attacks on that bank system." Sarah looked at her daughter with concern. "Maya, you shouldn't be listening to their business conversations. These are private company matters." "I know, but the attack pattern suggests someone is planning something bigger," Maya insisted, her young face serious with concentration. "I've been studying the code signatures, and they look like reconnaissance missions." Sarah had learned to take her daughter's technical insights seriously, even when she didn't fully understand the complex concepts Maya discussed. "Maybe you could mention your concerns to someone who works here." The next morning, Maya approached David Chen as he passed through the reception area, her small laptop clutched in her hands. "Excuse me, Mr. Chen. I think your company should be worried about coordinated attacks on multiple banking systems." David paused, looking down at the 11-year-old girl with mild amusement. "That's an interesting observation. What makes you think that?" Maya opened her laptop and showed him the analysis she'd compiled overnight, a detailed breakdown of the Henderson Bank attack that identified specific code signatures and attack methodologies that suggested systematic probing of financial infrastructure. "This wasn't a random attack," Maya explained with the confidence of someone who understood the technical details completely. "The hackers were testing response times and defense protocols. Look at these patterns. They're systematically mapping vulnerabilities across multiple entry points." David found himself staring at cybersecurity analysis that rivaled the work of his senior engineers. The 11-year-old sitting in his reception area had identified attack patterns and drawn connections that his own team had missed. "Where did you learn to do this kind of analysis?" David asked, his tone shifting from amused indulgence to genuine professional interest. "I taught myself using online resources and library books," Maya replied matter-of-factly. "I spend about 6 hours a day studying cybersecurity when I can get computer access at the shelter." David's preconceptions about talent and capability underwent a sudden, dramatic shift. This child, living in a homeless shelter and using donated equipment, had demonstrated analytical abilities that impressed him more than many resumes he'd reviewed from prestigious universities. "Maya, would you mind showing this analysis to my security team?" David asked. "I think they'd be very interested in your insights." 20 minutes later, Maya found herself in CyberShield's main security operations center, surrounded by engineers with advanced degrees who listened with growing amazement as she explained her findings. Her homeless shelter background and young age initially generated skepticism, but her technical competence quickly earned their respect. "She's right about the coordination patterns," admitted Dr. Patricia Williams, CyberShield's chief security analyst. "We missed these connections because we were analyzing each incident separately." Maya's analysis proved prophetic 3 days later when a massive coordinated cyber attack struck 16 major banks simultaneously across the western United States. The assault was more sophisticated than anything previously seen, combining multiple attack vectors to overwhelm traditional defensive systems. "It's exactly what Maya predicted," Dr. Williams reported to David as alarms screamed throughout CyberShield's operations center. "Someone spent months probing individual systems to identify vulnerabilities, and now they're exploiting all of them simultaneously." The attack threatened to collapse the entire regional banking system, potentially causing economic chaos that would affect millions of people. Traditional defensive measures were proving inadequate against the hackers' sophisticated coordination and their intimate knowledge of each bank's specific vulnerabilities. "We need fresh thinking," David declared as his team struggled to contain the assault. "Maya, I know you're just 11 years old, but right now you might understand this attack better than anyone else in the building." Maya had been watching the unfolding crisis from the reception area, her analytical mind processing the attack patterns she observed on the monitors throughout the office. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. The hackers weren't just stealing money, they were attempting to damage the banking infrastructure so severely that public confidence in the financial system would be destroyed. "Mr. Chen," Maya said, approaching the operations center with unusual urgency, "they're not trying to steal money. They're trying to cause a financial panic by making people think the banking system can't be trusted." David looked at Maya with newfound respect. "What do you think we should do?" Maya opened her laptop and began typing rapidly, her fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "I've been tracking their command and control servers. Instead of just defending against the attacks, we need to disrupt their coordination systems." What followed was the most unusual cybersecurity operation in Silicon Valley history. While CyberShield's adult engineers implemented traditional defensive measures, 11-year-old Maya Johnson launched a sophisticated counterattack against the hackers' infrastructure, using techniques she had developed during countless hours of self-directed study. "She's isolating their command servers," Dr. Williams reported with amazement. "Maya's cutting off communication between different parts of their attack network." Maya's approach was unconventional, but brilliant. Instead of trying to block 16 separate attacks, she identified the central coordination system that synchronized the hackers' activities and systematically dismantled their ability to operate as a unified force. "Got them," Maya announced quietly as the attack indicators on CyberShield's monitors began changing from red to yellow to green. "Their coordination is disrupted. The individual attacks should start failing now." Over the next 2 hours, the massive cyber assault collapsed as the hackers lost their ability to coordinate activities across multiple targets. Banks began restoring normal operations, and the threat of financial panic receded. "Maya Johnson just saved the West Coast banking system," David announced to his staff, his voice filled with awe and gratitude. "An 11-year-old girl living in a homeless shelter accomplished what our entire industry was struggling to achieve." The aftermath of the cyber attack transformed Maya's life in ways she had never imagined possible. CyberShield Technologies offered her a position as a junior security consultant with flexible hours that allowed her to continue her education while developing her extraordinary abilities. More importantly, the company provided housing assistance that enabled Maya and her mother to move into a stable apartment. "We want to establish a full scholarship program for Maya," David explained to Sarah during a meeting in his office. "She'll have access to the best cybersecurity education available, along with mentorship from our senior staff." But Maya's impact extended far beyond her personal circumstances. Her success exposed the narrow thinking that pervaded Silicon Valley's approach to identifying and developing talent. The industry had been overlooking potential genius because it didn't come packaged in expected forms. "Maya changed how we think about talent recognition," David explained during a conference presentation about cybersecurity innovation. We realized that some of our most valuable insights were coming from someone who learned programming in a homeless shelter computer lab. 6 months later, Maya Johnson was featured on the cover of Cybersecurity Today magazine as America's youngest cyber defense expert. The article described how her unconventional education and fresh perspective had revolutionized approaches to network security. But Maya remained focused on using her abilities to help others. "I want to teach other kids that you can learn anything if you're curious and persistent," Maya told the interviewer. "You don't need expensive equipment or fancy schools. You just need access to information and the determination to keep learning." Maya continued living in the apartment CyberShield had helped her family secure, but she also established a computer lab at Hope Haven Homeless Shelter, providing equipment and instruction for other children whose circumstances might otherwise limit their educational opportunities. "Maya's story proves that brilliance can emerge from any background," said Mrs. Rodriguez, the volunteer coordinator who had first witnessed Maya's dedication to learning. "She's inspiring other kids here to believe that technology skills can change their lives." Sarah Johnson watched her daughter's transformation with immense pride, but what impressed her most was how Maya remained grounded in the values that had sustained their family through difficult times. Success hadn't changed her daughter's compassion or her commitment to helping others facing similar challenges. "Maya never forgets where she came from," Sarah observed as she watched her daughter patiently teach basic programming to a group of shelter children. "She uses her gifts to lift up other people." 2 years after the banking system attack, Maya's cybersecurity algorithms were protecting critical infrastructure across the United States. Her techniques for disrupting coordinated cyber attacks had become standard defensive protocols, and her approach to identifying attack patterns was taught at universities nationwide. But Maya's proudest achievement wasn't the national recognition or the technology innovations. It was the computer lab she had established at Hope Haven, where dozens of children had discovered their own passion for programming and digital skills. "Education is the most powerful weapon we have against poverty," Maya told a group of Silicon Valley executives during a presentation about talent development. "When we provide learning opportunities to kids who need them most, we discover abilities that might otherwise remain hidden." David Chen kept a framed photo on his office wall, not of a product launch or business achievement, but of Maya teaching programming to children at the homeless shelter where her own journey had begun. The image reminded him daily that innovation could emerge from any circumstances, and that true leadership meant recognizing and nurturing potential wherever it appeared. The homeless shelter girl who had been overlooked and dismissed had proven that cybersecurity expertise could develop in overcrowded computer labs and donated equipment, that brilliance didn't require privilege, and that the most sophisticated solutions sometimes came from minds that approached problems without preconceived limitations. Maya's story had transformed not just her own life, but the entire technology industry's understanding of where talent could be found and how it should be developed. Her journey from shelter resident to cybersecurity expert had shown that with curiosity, determination, and access to learning opportunities, any child could develop skills that might change the world. And every evening, as Maya continued her tradition of using technology to solve problems that mattered, she remembered the lesson that had guided her extraordinary journey. That knowledge was the one thing no one could take away, and that true security came from using her abilities to protect others and create opportunities for those who needed them most. The girl, who had learned to code in 30-minute intervals at a homeless shelter, had become living proof that extraordinary capability could emerge from the most challenging circumstances, and that sometimes the most advanced cybersecurity came from the most unexpected places. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.